One of our standard principles in American law is that we always lean on the side of caution. We will say in criminal realm that it is better for 100 guilty to go free than one innocent to be imprisoned. Here we have a similar situation of needing to lean into the side of caution. There are those who would still say to this day, despite the overwhelming evidence, that the fetus feels no pain. And yet, we heard even today how our medical professionals administer anesthetics to people diagnosed with being brain dead right before they harvest their organs, in the small case that they might actually feel that pain. Applying that same standard here would require us for this particular procedure to make it the standard of care. Now, it is true that a woman might be able to ask her abortionist to give that child an anesthetic. But my experience with girls who are experiencing unwanted pregnancy, that's the furthest thing from their mind. And we heard from some women today who are post-abortive who said, I didn't even consider that. I didn't even consider it. How much did my child suffer? And it just compounds the trauma that they now have to overcome. In the land of liberté, égalité, and fraternité, otherwise known as France, this is the requirement. A nationwide expectation law that says in the second and third trimesters, all children being aborted must be administered a fetal anesthetic. Both here and there is a recognition, or hopefully there will be a recognition here, of the importance of providing that painkiller. We heard from opposition. One point that was made is this is not economically efficient. Not economically efficient to minimize suffering? Are we really there? This costs too much. Sorry. Is that really what we say? We also heard this is already being done. We already give the mother an anesthetic. But the research that I've done says that it's not enough to actually reach the child, especially within the time frames that are provided. And then we heard from members in the pro-life community who said, you can't vote on this bill because you can't approve of the underlying crime. We have to stop these homicides, this legalized genocide. That is what it is, ladies and gentlemen. 63 million people, 63 million kids have been lost. For those who believe in soulmates, your soulmate may have been lost in this way. 63 million kids over 50 years. And those are the ones we have any sort of record on. But here in Colorado, we don't keep good records. So really, how many children have we lost? How many of their children and their children? We're into 3 generations deep, at least, since this was legalized or codified or, Roe allowed it. But now we stand at a different point in history. We are post-Dobbs. We are post-Roe. So we no longer can abdicate this responsibility to some ambiguous constitutional statement brought down by the federal government. This is now on each one of us. And I am only 1/100th of this body. But I will tell you, I will fight with everything that I have for these little ones, for their mothers who are devastated, so many of them who do not want to go through this process and are forced into it. For our communities, especially our minority communities, who are specifically targeted by the founders of Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger, look it up, in order to decimate that population. For our whole society, who is facing labor shortage after labor shortage, we are in demographic winter. It requires 2.1 people to be reproduced every, right? We have to reproduce at a rate of 2.1 people. We're not doing that in this country, so much so that national leaders are saying we have to increase immigration because of the demographic shortage and what that will do to our economy long term. We have aborted our generations. And while I know that's not this bill, and I hope that you will give serious consideration to the bill to come, what I do know is that if this policy of legalizing homicide continues in Colorado, the very least we can do is make it humane. The very least we can do. I started out my opening remarks sharing of my story, one of the critical touch points of my transformation from being ardently pro-choice to ardently pro-life. And I will close with a story in a classroom. When I taught 6th grade, we did a unit on the Greek city-states. And one of the city-states that we focused on was Sparta. And the materials that we were reading, it was talking about, because they were such a warrior society, they would allow for no weakness. And if a child was born with any sort of infirmity, they would leave it on the hillside. They would leave that child on the hillside to be killed by the elements and by the wildlife. I had a student who raised her hand and she said, "Miss Luck, how could a society be so barbaric?" And I honestly could not give her an answer. I swallowed hard. I walked away. Because all the while I was thinking, Miss Bailey, that is our society. We are still doing that. The only difference is that we're doing it behind closed doors. It's no longer out on the hillside for everyone to see. If we are going to continue that policy, which I pray to God we won't, but if we are, the very least we can do is not be recorded in the annals of history as barbarians to that extent. Thank you.